So anyone familiar with Scottish people will know that one thing we like more than drinking is fighting, and for that reason I've always been a big fan of the Rocky films. The series had its ups and downs over the years, but like a lot of people, I thought Rocky Balboa was a fitting send-off for one of cinema's most iconic characters. An aging but still vital Rocky was able to redeem himself, proving he had it in him to go one more round, and face up to his autumn years with a new sense of purpose and fulfillment. It was the perfect ending for him, really. I remember thinking as I left the cinema, wow, I really hope Stallone is smart enough to leave this character alone now. Anything more would just ruin him. So I wasn't exactly thrilled to learn they were bringing Rocky back out of retirement again nearly 10 years later with the announcement of Creed, written and directed by Ryan Coogler. It was the story of Apollo Creed's son who wants to follow in his dad's footsteps and enlists Rocky's help to train him for the fight of his life against the world heavyweight champion. It's sounding an awful lot like a repackaged version of the original Rocky, trying to use nostalgia and name recognition to launch a new franchise with a manufactured star. And as it turned out, that's pretty much exactly what it was. Let's begin with the story, shall we? So the movie follows Adonis Creed, the illegitimate son of Rocky's former opponent, Apollo. Adonis was adopted as a teenager by Apollo's widow. Flash forward to the present day and he's a successful stockbroker by day and an unlicensed boxer by night. He wants to be just like his dad, even though he resents him for dying or something, so he sneaks over the border to Mexico every once in a while to have illegal fights. He's won 15 bouts in a row, so he decides to quit his job and turn pro, but nobody will train him for some reason because of his father's legacy, even though the children of boxing legends are pretty much solid gold as far as fight promoters go. Whatever. So he moves to Philly to track down a long-retired Rocky, and he convinces him to train him. He also hooks up with his neighbour because she plays music really loud in the middle of the night. Personally, I've got my own way of dealing with situations like that, but each to their own. Her name's Bianca and she enjoys music because she's going deaf. And that's all I can think of to say about her, really. So Creed wins his first fight against some local bum, and this magically attracts the attention of heavyweight champ Ricky Conlan. Conlan's about to go to jail for doing something bad, which means the end of his career, and he's looking for a big payday before that happens. He senses money to be made from Creed's name and he challenges him, and Creed accepts the fight. But all is not well in Camp Creed because it turns out Rocky's got cancer. It's treatable, but he's not willing to do it because he's old now. Everyone he cares about is dead and he's given up on life. How uplifting, definitely the Rocky we remember.
But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done.
Anyway, Creed knocks out some asshole who provokes him, he gets arrested, and then he rants at Rocky for a while, and Rocky decides to do the treatment to shut him up. So basically both men are fighting a battle in their own way. Creed's fighting to get ready for his match against Conlan and prove there's more to him than just his last name, and Rocky's fighting to survive the cancer that's ravaging his health. So we get both a training and a dying montage at the same time. Nice. Anyway, needless to say, they both eventually win. The fight rolls around and both boxers go at it. Conlan's the superior fighter, but Creed's determination not to go down allows him to go the distance against the champ. He eventually loses in a split decision, but it doesn't matter because he's earned the respect of his opponent, the love of his girlfriend, and the gratitude of his trainer. Yo, Adrian, he did it. And that's it, that's the plot of Creed. So why don't I like it? Well, basically because it does everything the original Rocky did, only not as good. Worse, it disrespects and undermines a lot of the original characters in order to do it. The first thing I want to talk about is Rocky himself, who's simultaneously the best and the worst part of this movie. Like I said earlier, Rocky Balboa ended his story on a perfect bittersweet note. He'd overcome his grief at the death of Adrian, he'd reconnected with his estranged son, and proven that he still had what it took to go the distance, both in the ring and in life. And there was even a hint of a relationship with Marie. I was happy to say goodbye to The Rock, knowing he'd finally found peace and meaning in life again, and he was ready to move on, a happy and fulfilled man. Then we see him in Creed, and he's a sad, lonely old man with no friends or family left, just killing time until the end eventually comes. Reminds me of another character I could think of. I can see what they were going for here at least. The lonely, cynical old man who finds a new lease of life by bonding with a young protege. I mean, the original Rocky did the same thing with Mickey, but it just feels totally out of place and undeserved here. Mickey was a man who had nothing and nobody in his whole life, and it made him hard and angry as a result. But Rocky's a different sort of character. We've seen him go through similar pain and loss in Rocky Balboa, and he came out the other side a stronger and more fulfilled man. Now it's just more of the same, only he's lost even more friends, and he's even more depressed this time around. The formula's the same, it's just the values that are different. And it completely undermines his character. Rocky was always about perseverance in the face of adversity, determination to succeed and triumph against the odds. He might have been a humble boxer and not all that bright, but he represented everything that was good and noble about the human spirit. Even a drunken asshole like me could appreciate him. Now I guess Ryan Coogler felt he needed to be deconstructed, because that's what we're all about these days, right? Picking heroic characters apart, because everything and everyone we used to look up to has to be broken down and diminished. I expect to leave a Rocky movie feeling pumped and uplifted, but I came out of Creed feeling downbeat and depressed, and there was only one cure for that kind of thing. Still, even if I disagree with what's happened to his character, one thing I can't deny here is that Stallone himself delivers a powerhouse performance that's head and shoulders above everything else in this film, and it deservedly earned him an Oscar nomination. Anyone who says the guy can't act should watch the original Rocky and then Creed, and then apologise directly to me for being an uninformed moron. Rocky's the glue that holds this movie together, albeit barely, and it's kinda sad really that an old man with nothing left to live for is more compelling and interesting than the film's actual main character. Which brings me neatly along to the biggest problem here, Adonis Creed himself. Why? Because Ryan Coogler can't seem to decide who and what Creed is, what he stands for, or where he's trying to get to, so I don't really know either. The original Rocky had a clearly defined character. He was a down-on-his-luck nobody who lived in a crappy apartment and had to work unpleasant jobs to make ends meet. He was good-natured but kinda stupid, and nobody ever really believed in him. But when he's given 1,000,000 to 1 chance to be someone, it gives him a sense of purpose and determination that he's never had before, and he rises to the occasion by going the distance when no one else has. It's a classic, timeless story of a strong, lovable, flawed character that people still enjoy even now. Adonis Creed, on the other hand, just feels like a weird, soulless collection of different ideas and constraints that don't really work together or even make sense. He's a product of necessity and, more importantly, fear of criticism rather than artistic passion, and it shows. It's like when Coogler sat down to write his character, he was like, okay, so he's Apollo Creed's son. Wait, that doesn't work because we already know Apollo had 2 young kids in Rocky 2, so that would have to make Adonis at least 40 years old by now. Okay, well, we'll say he's an illegitimate son that was conceived just before Apollo died in 1985. Okay, that'll do, move on. So he was raised in poverty or something by his real mum, I guess. No, because we need to link in with Apollo Creed's family, otherwise there's not strong enough of a connection to make it relevant. Okay, so his real mum dies when he's a teenager or something and he goes off the rails, but then Apollo Creed's wife finds out about him somehow and adopts him. So now he's a rich kid from a wealthy family, but we can't imply that he's dumb or sponging off them, so we'll make him, a stockbroker, I guess. Something smart with computers and nice offices. Now we're making him seem like some kind of rich corporate asshole. So let's say he sneaks off to have unlicensed boxing fights every once in a while, and he's really good and he wins all the time. Wait, now he just seems rich and successful and great at everything, but we need him to seem like an underdog so the audience will feel sorry for him. So let's say he quits his job to become a pro boxer, but then he loses a fight and nobody will train him for some reason, so he goes and finds Rocky. That'll do, move on. You see how writing a character with all these constraints and issues to work around just leaves you with a weird, inconsistent mess that has no obvious flaws, personality, or character arc. It's what I call the Ray effect. They wanted a hero to go on the classic hero's journey, but the problem is that part of the hero's journey involves struggling, losing, and failing in order to grow and learn. And because Ray is a product of identity politics and third-wave feminism, she can't be allowed to fail or lose at anything, especially to a man. So instead of the peaks and troughs of the hero's journey, what you end up with is an abbreviated straight line of endless domination. That's why people like us, who actually appreciate good storytelling, can't get behind these characters, because they recognise there's something fundamentally missing. But anyway, I digress. Creed's backstory also disrespects his father Apollo, since we now know he was a womanizer who cheated on his wife and fathered at least one illegitimate kid. Great, thanks for that, Ryan. Apollo was always portrayed as a decent, honourable man in the original movies. Yeah, he was kind of cocky and full of himself, and his overconfidence eventually got the better of him, but he wasn't really a bad guy. He even became a friend and an ally to Rocky in the later movies. But now we get all these sordid details of his private life that were clearly never part of the character's backstory. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if he drank too much and beat his wife to pass the time between fights, if this script's anything to go by. But the biggest problem with Creed is that I just didn't care about him, for two reasons. One, because I never had a strong sense of who he was, what he wanted, or why he wanted it. And two, because there was absolutely nothing at stake for him. If he'd failed as a boxer, he would have just gone back to being a rich and successful stockbroker with a rich, loving and supportive family behind him. He already had everything he needed in life. I couldn't empathise with this guy's struggle because he didn't have one. Likewise, there was no satisfaction in his journey because he doesn't actually go anywhere. He's the same guy at the end of the movie as he was at the start, only a bit more successful now. Coogler obviously wanted to say something profound about the nature of legacy, family, and the complex relationship between fathers and their sons as they grow into men, but he doesn't really seem to know what exactly he wants to say or how to get it across. Adonis could have been resentful of his dead father for letting his pride get him killed, or he could idolise him as a model of perfection and refuse to see his very human flaws, or he could even feel trapped and overshadowed by the Creed legacy. He could be any one of these things and it would have given him a solid character arc, but instead Coogler tries to make him all three, and the result's as inconsistent as everything else about him. The guy just can't seem to decide what to focus on. Michael B. Jordan's performance doesn't really help. He's obviously got in shape for the role and he can handle himself well in the fight scenes, but for the most part the guy's acting is so wooden you could build high quality rustic furniture out of it and sell it to pretentious middle class couples from London at a huge markup. Say what you want about Stallone's acting over the years, but his performance as Rocky 40 years ago was raw, intense and emotional. You could really feel the guy's inner pain and frustration beneath the veneer of optimism and joviality. But Creed just feels like a hollow shell by comparison, impressive on the outside but without a strong personality or drive to push him forward and keep you invested in him. The supporting characters aren't much help either. There's Tessa Thompson as Bianca. She's the love interest of Creed, and just like Adrian, she's deficient in a way. Whereas Adrian suffered from crippling shyness that held her back from living a full life, Bianca's gradually going deaf because of reasons, which makes being a musician a bit of an odd choice of career, but never mind. There's not much to the character beyond her disability, and I can't say she's helped by the actress playing her. There's something about Tessa Thompson that makes me want to drink toilet duck. Again. I think it's the annoying Tandy Newton smirk she seems to have in every role she plays, so you can imagine that Westworld was a pretty challenging viewing experience for me. There's also Ricky Conlan, played by Tony Bellew. Bellew's a real-life boxer, following in the proud Rocky tradition of assuming it's easier to teach boxers to act rather than actors to box.
And I ain't nobody's robot, nobody's boy. Now you accepting the challenge or you yellow?
Yeah, I'm not sure that one's a winner. I mean, he's okay in the role, I guess, although his thick Liverpool accent must have had American audiences scratching their heads. Also, Bellew was never exactly known for his chiselled physique, so he seems a bit of a weird matchup against Creed here. He's supposed to be the dominant champ, but he looks smaller and weaker than his challenger, and it just sets a weird tone for their fight. We're never given much of an insight into Conlan's personality or history, but he seems to be a vague copy of Apollo from the first movie, just like everything else in this film. He's brash and arrogant, and he's got no real respect for his opponent, but by the end he learns there's more to Creed than his family name. Wow, how original, Ryan. And that's really where my criticism of Creed stems from. Everything about this film just feels like a bland, watered-down, soulless rehash of the original Rocky, without really understanding what made it so special and unique in the first place. It looks flashy and cool and nicely packaged, much like its main character, but it explores the exact same themes and ideas that the series has already covered with much more passion and intelligence. And worst of all, it does all of this by standing on the shoulders of characters who've been around since the very first movie, and really deserve much better. As the old saying so rightly goes, it's both good and original, but the parts that are good aren't original, and the parts that are original aren't good. My final thought on Creed is to ask the same question that Mr. Plinkett once asked about the Star Wars prequels. Is this a story that really needed to be told? I'll let you decide. Wait, no I won't. It didn't need to be told, because the drinker said so. Anyway, that's all I have for today. Go away now.